Hi, Roo. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Johnny. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to today for a myth busting session. It's not going to be as good as the Discovery Channel one, but I
Well, we'll
imagine
see.
we'll see. We're going to have
A
the
few years down the line, we might get Adam and Jamie on.
yeah, sold. I'm going to make it happen. Uh, yeah, I'm looking forward to this because I've been following your guidance on, getting into the gym, especially strength training, and with the questions that we put out and got responses back from people on the biggest myths that they want to yay or nay,
Sure.
whether they're true or not. I imagine I'm probably going to fall into some of them, to be honest, and be
You
like,
are.
what,
Everyone
that's,
does.
oh yeah, that's not true. That sounds like blasphemy. I heard it from a guy on the internet. He said it was true.
Well, it's on
Um,
the internet.
yeah, and yeah, I think we'll just get stuck straight into it. So
Sounds good.
the first myth that our audience have put up or fact is that exercise timing, you can't train first thing in the morning, but then they also say they also hear you can't train before bed. So that's
Mhm.
obviously two very conflicting statements. So what gives with that is one fact, is one not, is it nuanced? What's the crack with that?
So, for the most part, and you'll probably find as we go through these myths that a lot of them are nuanced because there's so many variables in an
All right.
individual person.
Okay.
And it's going to depend on things like what sort of training you're doing, how intense the training is, how trained an individual is. So, if it's someone who's brand new to it, obviously there's other steps to take to get into the swing of things than just someone who's been doing it all their life. Uh, so the reason it comes up, we'll take one first, we'll take the other, and then we'll weigh up the positives and negatives.
Yeah.
Uh, People saying you can't train first thing in the morning is generally falling down to the idea that you're going to be sluggish. First thing in the morning, you need to fuel, you need to get food into you, and for the most part, you're going to be, if you're really going to be taking like strength training and things like that, uh, you're more likely to injure yourself because the body hasn't fully woken up yet. Um, an interesting way to put it, I had once attended a seminar with Magnus for Magnuson, 4 times world's strongest man,
Oh
and he was
wow.
saying out of all the people that competed, he saw the most injuries first thing in the morning because people were going
Oh.
far too early into it and far too intensely. Now, obviously, this is top level competition with some of the strongest people in the world. Well, not some of the strongest people in the world, but he said for the most part, he found that your body needs to wake up for about 4 hours before it can be at its optimal.
4 hours?
And 4 hours, which is a significant amount of time, but that's not to say you can't do anything in the first four
Yeah.
hours of the morning.
Just maybe just not lifting 2 or 3 times your body weight
Yeah,
first thing in the morning.
yeah.
Okay.
The way he put it, on the days it came to competition, he would be up, say he had an event starting at 9:30 or 10. He'd be up from 5:30 or 6, take himself out for a light jog to get the body moving, start for the day. It's a light jog. It's not going to be far too intense on the body. Following that, he'd get himself a nice warm shower, get himself his breakfast. And when he's rolling into breakfast, these other strong men are getting up and they're just straight out of bed. They're yawning at the breakfast table and all that, and they're completely sluggish. And he's been up for a few hours already, got his body ready. And that's why he won it 4 times,
Oh yeah, fair.
simply for being more prepared. So,
That
the interesting take from that, anyway. And he was saying, for the most part, the injuries all involved people training in the morning.
that
So,
is insane. So like I know you're saying not to, you can do something, but just
mm-hmm.
obviously not the heavy lifting. So what um would you recommend would be the best exercise to do first thing in the morning? I know it
Okay.
depends on your goals and it's nuanced, but
Yeah.
is there
But
a
if you were going
general?
to do something, what would be the safest,
Yeah. Yeah.
most beneficial sort of thing? Some light fasted cardio is good. The
Okay.
idea of fasted cardio means that you're training without eating anything, so you're fasted from the night before. The studies have shown that it has been proven to burn up to 20% more body fat. I believe that was the British Journal of Nutrition. And the idea being that the body's going to have to use its own stores of energy because you haven't fueled it with anything yet. And yeah, that's why fasted cardio works. But anything that's going to be lightweight, even some lightweight calisthenics, bodyweight movements. It's actually a Japanese business practice, and they'll have all their co-workers will gather together in the mornings and do some light calisthenics because it gets the blood pumping around the body, it gets the metabolism kicked in, gets them ready, loosened up for working for the full day. So lightweight calisthenics or a light run somewhere,
That's
perfect.
that's pretty cool. So When you say calisthenics, I've got a rough idea of what that is, but can I just be safe in assuming that's some simple press ups, maybe
Yep.
some simple
So
planks or something?
not even necessarily when you think of bodyweight exercise, was like planks, dips, push-ups, and that sort of thing. Uh, Simply mobilizing the joints in that, you'll see they'll take their limbs through their range of motion. You'll see them do shoulder circles, things like that. Even like you see that sort of hands on hips, and they sort of like as if you were doing a hula hoop sort of thing,
Yeah.
loosens up the lower spine, loosens up the pelvis and the hips and that. Just getting the joints loosened up for the day, sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be right. We're going to do sets of push-ups, sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool. And based on, this very conflicting idea of you can't exercise in the morning, you can't exercise at night, would it be better would a better question probably be you shouldn't do these particular exercises in the morning and you shouldn't do these particular exercises at night. So I've heard that strength training is you're better doing strength training in the evening. Cardio, I imagine you can do just pretty much any time of day. But is there any weight to that?
To a point, yes. So we've discussed the morning side of things. We'll talk a bit now about the evening side of things.
Yeah.
So the reason people are saying about not training right before bed is the idea that following training, and you'll know this yourself, you feel quite energized even if you've used a lot of energy.
Yeah,
So
100%.
there's people would argue that that can then affect sleep quality and winding down for the night. But the thing would be, as long as you leave yourself ample time following training to get a meal in, to get showered, to wind down before bed, there's nothing wrong with training in the evening. Um, Reasons behind strength training being more optimal in the evening is more of a biological thing. Uh, Later in the day, your body's going to be more warmed up. And I don't mean like you've done a warm up for training. I mean, you've been moving about all day, so it's ready to go. As well as later in the day, you'll have had more meals through your day, so there'll be more energy present to then perform with, which is why it can be a bit better in the evening. But there's also studies backing up that if you were to do strength training for the sake of gaining muscle, gaining a bit of size, that there's more muscle growth takes place in the evening because there's more hormones are released later in the day.
Oh, right. Okay.
So don't quote me on that exactly, but there's multiple studies showing an A and B comparison of people who've trained the same regimen, but they're doing it early in the morning. I believe it was between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then in the evening, which I think was 4 p.m., 7 p.m., I think.
All right.
But
Okay.
they had shown that the ones in the latter half of the day had improved muscle mass over the same
Wow.
program.
That's amazing how you would think that just doing the exercise, regardless, is going to give you the same results. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really down to timing and your biological hormones and things like
There's
that. There's so much
there's so
science
many
into it.
variables in it, and
Yeah.
like for 100 people saying that it's better for them in the evening, there'll be 100 more saying it's better for them in the morning. So
Yeah. But I suppose that's in a way, it's kind of like how we've evolved as a species, isn't it? Like there is that natural variability
oh,
within
there's
within
morning
this.
people and there's night owls is absolutely a real thing.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
like natural dispositions to sleeping patterns, and the
yeah.
idea of the 24-hour day. Not everyone actually fits into that with their own circadian rhythms. So
Yeah.
it's
So if
maybe a
we
topic for another day.
100%. So to bust this myth with a little one-liner,
Mhm.
the myth being exercise timing, you can't train first thing, you can't train before bed. What would be your one-liner to bust that myth?
Kind of put me on the spot here. So the line for that would be that it is a myth, and it sounds like a bit of a cop out, but it depends.
Yeah. Like
Like
everything in life, isn't it?
like everything in life, it depends on the individual, and it's not a matter of you can't do it. It's a matter of there's ways to go about it.
Yeah. So perhaps then the best way is to know yourself, know whether you're a morning person, an evening person, know
Mhm.
exactly what your goals are, and then adjust your routine and
Yeah,
do the routines that you
and as
or you.
well, like your work-life balance is going to fall into it as well.
Oh,
Like if you
100%.
work in the morning, some people getting into work 7 8 a.m. When you got to train before that? Are you really going to get up at 5 or 6 to get a training
Yeah.
session in, get your breakfast, get a shower? Some people will. Personally,
Yeah.
not for me.
Oh, 99% of people on December 31st will. How
Oh yeah.
by the end of the first week of January, I imagine I'll be back down to single digit percentages. But yeah, thanks, man. So we'll move on to the next one. Next myth on the list is exercise duration. should be 45 minutes to 90 minutes. So I've heard some things, when I've been in the gym and, a bit of bro science has come in, people
Mhm.
are saying there's no point going beyond 45 minutes because, like, there's no more muscle growth after that. Get
Mhm.
in, get out and do it. And then there's other people who say, no, 90 minutes, get as much, smash your body as much as you can, and you'll get the most muscle growth. So, what element is myth? What's the facts to this?
Again, it's a guideline.
Yeah.
Same way the government has their guidelines for what you should be eating. This sort of stems from that as well. Um, Exercise duration. If you solely stuck to 45 minutes to 90 minutes, you wouldn't have marathon runners,
Valid point.
sort of thing. As well, you wouldn't have these wee fitness classes. They would all just be a money grab because there would be no effect. Like these 20, 30-minute cardio hit workouts,
Yeah.
why would they be so effective for burning fat if the limit was 45 minutes minimum? Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. And that's yeah, I've put me on the spot now because I was sat there thinking like I was looking at it very one dimensional from a strength point of view, and then you've got these ultra runners who are like running
Yeah.
for like 18 hours or something, doing
But
like
even that
100
as well,
mile races.
you'll get bodybuilders are in the gym 3 hours a day
Yeah,
or multiple sessions a day as well.
fair
And
enough.
you'll get weightlifters, so sort of other side of the spectrum. Bodybuilders try to lift the lightest weight and the hardest way to build the muscle. Weightlifters try to get the most out of their strength. We'll do sometimes 2 sessions in a day, and sometimes a session could be 15, 20 minutes, obviously with warm up and all that sort of thing.
Yeah,
But 15 to 20 minutes because they're going for maximum intensity but low frequency so they can recover, or low
yeah.
volume so they can recover.
That's an interesting one. So just for the people who are looking to gain strength, you said a very interesting comment there, and I'm gonna try and not butcher it. You're saying that weightlifters try to lift the lightest weights in the hardest way, and
No,
sorry,
bodybuilders lift the lightest weights
bodybuilders,
in the hardest way,
right? Okay. And what was the second
and
category?
weightlifters try to lift the heaviest weight the easiest way.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting. I've never heard that statement before. And I assume that 99% of people are going to fall into the latter category because they're not going to go on to a stage and do bodybuilding.
Well,
Or
at
is
the same time,
it, is that is
same
that
time,
ignorant of me? Say bodybuilders are just for going on stage and it's not the health benefits?
not at all. Well, health benefits, it's a grey area at the top level of the game because obviously there's PEDs and the likes of that involved.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when it comes to bodybuilding, it doesn't mean they can't be strong. There's some phenomenally strong bodybuilders, but the idea is that they're getting the most out of whatever weights they use to build the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that they're always using the lightest weights to build that muscle.
Right.
So that saying that I gave at the start there wasn't necessarily that's exactly how bodybuilders do it, because there wouldn't be people like, I don't know if you've seen Larry Wheels.
I'm afraid I haven't. No.
No, definitely worth looking up.
All
Brutally
right.
strong bodybuilder turned powerlifter.
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
for the most part, when they are at the top of the game with bodybuilding, they are brutally strong as well.
Can
Yeah.
imagine so. They just look like Bane, don't they? And it's fucking summer swimwear or something. Um, yeah, man. Now just moving on to the next myth
Sure.
that we've put up or question. I don't think it's fair to call them all myths because I'm sure there's some truth to every
Well,
statement.
most of them it's like grain of salt sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. So the next question from the audience was, you have to do long workouts to lose weight.
Mhm.
So what's the story behind that one?
So it's an exaggerated idea stemming from the idea that cardiovascular training is the best for burning fat, which it is. But they've sort of like drawn that out to the point of then, right, cardiovascular, go for a run, have to do it forever until I burn everything off, sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
So for the body to metabolize fat, oxygen needs to be present. Oxygen is present in exercise known as aerobic exercise because that's where you get heavy breathing in that long distance. For, for the most part, anything that is long distance, steady state, or long duration will be cardiovascular, but that doesn't mean that it's the only way to burn fat. So
Right.
when it comes to a training approach, you hear of the likes of HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training.
Yeah.
The idea of those workouts is to get the heart rate up, get you breathing heavy, but it's completely different from a steady state cardio. The idea is the more oxygen that you need to breathe when training, like you'll be huffing and puffing through a HIIT workout, but it may only be 10 to 15 minutes. This will have an effect following training where your metabolism is in overdrive and you'll actually continue burning fat afterwards.
You continue burning fat after the
after
exercise.
the exercise. So
Oh
they've referred
wow.
this as the epoch effect or the afterburn effect. I'm not entirely sure what epoch is, if it's an acronym or where it came from, but I've always heard it as like exercise post oxygen consumption as a way to remember it anyway.
Right.
But the idea then is because you've essentially been hyperventilating through your training, your body's been up at a higher temperature, your heart rate is up, so the blood's pumping faster around the body, that it does take its time to come down from this following training, and it will keep your metabolism in overdrive because you've had such an excess of oxygen brought in through that training session.
That's really interesting. So that's just blown my mind because I'm kind of like, once the exercise stops, like, yeah, there's maybe that 5-10 minute cool down period,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that your body is still burning
Still
fat,
working through.
yeah, that's incredible. So I just
So,
out of curiosity, is that how long would that last? Do you reckon, or is there any what's the science behind
so
that?
science behind it shows it can be, I believe, 24 to 48 hours, and obviously that's going to fluctuate because the individual level is going to fluctuate. But the best way to do it then is that's why you've seen so many programs will have people train every other day because it try and keeps this effect topped up, as it were. And it's
Yeah.
not as black and white as that. It's not like a phone battery where you can see it dead down and you need to plug it back in, sort of thing. It's never going to be as black and white as that, but that's sort of a simple way to look at it.
Fair enough. And the
Whereas if sorry to
go
cut you
on.
off, but whereas
Yeah,
if you're doing steady state cardio, you're
yeah.
only really burning fat for as long as you're doing it because you're not really getting your body to a point where it's really needing to get everything back into it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to just delve into this a little further.
Mm-hmm.
For the people whose goal is to lose body fat and they're trying everything and all these fad diets and things. In your opinion, do you reckon high intensity interval training is the best way to go?
Again, there'll never necessarily be a best way.
Right,
I would say
okay.
a combination of hit training as well as steady state cardio would be perfect for them because for the most part, it's going to be difficult to do the hit workouts. Like personally, I would find hit workouts difficult because I'm not as trained in them. So for someone who may be a bit overweight and trying to lose it, there's a lot more of them to move. And if they are a bit overweight, they'll likely be less trained
Hmm.
and will absolutely feel the effects of it. They'll maybe feel horrible for a couple of days after it as well.
So is it worth for people who want to lose weight to perhaps do steady state cardio first, or just throw themselves into hit workouts?
It will depend on the individual,
Depend the
but
individual.
everything is scalable.
Yeah.
Like a hit workout can be scalable for what they're doing in the hit workout. Exercise selection can be modified to a level they could perform.
Yeah. So it's a bit of common sense, but also get, an expert opinion before you start
Absolutely.
exercising. Don't just
Yeah.
because I unfortunately I think I may have told you this story before. I was in the gym once. This would have been about 4 years ago, and an older gentleman had come into the gym and he was going for it. Like I was like, fair play. Like he was Usain Bolting it on the treadmill, and he was giving it his all in the roar, and everyone in the gym was impressed. Like, fair play. This guy looked like he was 50,
Mhm.
55. At the back of my mind, I was like, please don't have a heart attack. It's just like like he was going harder than most of the young lads in the gym, and then came down to get changed, and I walked into the changing room, seen him, and it was lucky enough that I had seen him because as I walked in, he looked at me absolutely spaced out from being in the shower, and then he hit the deck
Oh,
like
perfect.
like yeah, it was weird because he like almost belly flopped, but it hit his head first
Oh,
somehow.
fair.
Yeah, so obviously we got the ambulance there. He was fine in the end. In fact, he was okay. He was able to drive home, but it was pretty obvious that this guy had not been to the gym in years. And
And
then he
just
had,
tanked himself.
oh yeah, he was like, he still thought he was maybe in his 20s, and he's
Yeah.
just gone for it, and completely like the ambulance crew did just say, look, you've just pushed yourself far too hard. You'll probably take
Mhm.
2 or 3 days to recover, but by all means, exercise, but just don't go from nothing to,
Yeah.
Olympic athlete in a day. It's so that's a little bit of common sense and get an expert opinion before you go and,
Yeah.
trash yourself at the gym, folks.
Absolutely. A bit of
Yeah.
expert instruction on what exercise you're doing as well, because there's so many ways to do it wrong and it can set you back so much further.
Yeah, as much and we discussed this actually on a previous episode where people in the gym are usually really, really nice and really helpful,
Mhm.
but
Just don't
health.
catch the mid set.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Don't catch the mid set. Yeah, go back to that episode and see our do's and don'ts in the gym. But for I would say have a healthy dose of skepticism because there's a lot of bro science out there, isn't there? And like, there's definitely
It's hard to
competing.
distinguish between as well.
Oh yeah,
Just because
100%.
someone on Instagram has a big following doesn't mean they know anything.
Yeah, exactly. And on the subject of, what you were saying there earlier about getting that expert opinion in whatever you're doing because a lot of people do it wrong. Can
Mhm.
you give a very short description of what high intensity interval training actually is? Because I think we've just said it and assumed
Yep,
that
sure.
people would know.
So generally, it's going to be a workout that is 30 minutes or less. Sometimes it can go on more, but you need to be quite trained for that sort of thing. Um, and what it is bringing the heart rate up in waves. So if you've ever been to the likes of a circuit class, they might have you on for 30 seconds, off for 30 seconds, sort of thing. An interval is basically a segment of time with a rest period in between it. And each interval is going to be high intensity, hence the name. So you're doing quick bursts that's really going to get you huffing and puffing. Then you get a short rest in between, and then you go again. And the idea is that you're shocking the body. I don't really like using that term, shocking the body, because you don't want to obviously shock yourself to a state that your fella in the shower find himself.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But it's these spikes in energy levels going to have the heart rate double guessing itself. It's going to have you huffing and puffing, getting all that oxygen in for the epoch effect, as we talked about, as well as just getting the heart and lungs really working.
Yeah.
And for the most part, people that aren't trained in it are going to feel awful. But it's also conditioning the body to be better at that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you'll find very quickly you can develop adaptations to be better at it.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly the body does adapt, though. I mean,
100%.
you know, I know certainly when I started training with you and Mark that granted it's gonna take years for me to get where I want to get. But like even within a couple of weeks, I'm kind of like I was lifting like, an extra 10 kilos
Mm-hmm.
on like, a squat and I think an extra 15 on a deadlift, to be honest. And I was just like all them, newbie gains as you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of there like, to be honest, when I look back, I probably think to myself, I probably could have lifted heavier initially, but
Yeah.
in our
Look,
previous,
if
yeah,
you don't have the instruction, obviously you're going to be a bit apprehensive.
oh
And if
yeah,
you don't know what heavy is to you,
yeah, yeah,
a
100%.
bit lighter feels heavy.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, it's a good thing I've got you and Mark to keep me right in the gym. I think we've exhausted that one, but no doubt there'll be plenty of questions from the audience on that one because I think there's so much more to dive into, but only so much time, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So the next myth we have from the audience or question is food after a workout doesn't count, so you can eat anything. And I'm interested in this because I had a
Yeah.
good friend of mine saying I thought you should follow the see it diet. I was like, the see it diet? Never heard of that one. Yeah, I see it, I eat it.
Mm-hmm.
You get the weight on if you want to build some mass.
Yeah. Well, that again would also fall into the sort of bodybuilding mindset where
Yeah.
the more calories, the more growth sort of thing. But it doesn't always work that way. So again, this is another exaggeration on an idea that the body will readily absorb nutrients from food following training because you've just spent a lot of energy. It needs to replenish that, but as
Hmm.
well for the body to recover and adapt, it needs to take all these building blocks to repiece itself together. So the best thing to eat would be something 45 minutes or so after training and something proteins and carbs really, because you need to replenish glycogen stores in the muscles that have been spent from exercising, as well as protein in the body for then recovery when you sleep to build the muscle. But this idea of eating anything after is very much a bro science matter.
Bro sides.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Um, I would say if you were going to have a cheat meal, so to speak, or really were craving something that you know you shouldn't be having, after a workout would probably be the ideal time to have it because your body's going to ideally use most of that straight off the bat, but it doesn't mean that there's going to be no repercussions for eating terribly after a workout.
Yeah. That's interesting. So just a couple of questions on that. And I don't know if I misheard you, but did you say that the ideal time to eat after a workout is 45 minutes after a workout or within
Within 45
within
minutes.
within
Yeah.
45 minutes? So why is that? Is that a particular metabolic window of some description or what's the
Not
science
not
there?
necessarily like you're using the term metabolic window, you also hear people talking of the anabolic window where you're
Yeah,
gonna build the most if you eat this time. It's more just a matter of because your body needs it,
yeah,
and if you leave it beyond that time, it's gonna take longer to absorb in that.
right.
It's more just a matter of sort of a common sense thing. Like after you train, you're gonna want to eat. The body needs food to fix itself.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other question is if you are eating a healthy meal afterwards, one thing that I've always wondered is that they always say, oh, you need to build your electrolytes up again, which to me is
Mm-hmm.
just salt. Is that correct? So sugars and salt,
Salt and minerals.
salt and minerals,
Sugars would fall under carbohydrates.
carbohydrates. Okay.
Yeah.
So, with regards to electrolytes, then what's the healthiest best
Just
way to get
what?
electrolytes in? Yeah, what yeah, essentially what how do you get them after your exercise in a good
So,
way?
for the most part, it's only if you're really sweating will you lose these electrolytes
Yeah.
because they sort of come out dissolved in the sweat and that. And it is just salts in the body. Like, unless you're a top tier athlete or you're sweating buckets, it's not really something to worry about. But if it is a concern, an isotonic drink, something like a Lucozade Sport or a Powerade or something like that, not sponsored by the way,
Not sponsored. I
would
wish.
be ideal. Something like
But
that would be ideal. There's some bodybuilders I've seen. Again, they're going to sweat a lot more because they're training a lot longer and they're trying to sweat out as well, just for the extra definition in that. Would go as much to put some salt in the water. And
yeah,
I'm not talking like a tablespoon of salt. I mean like a couple of turns of a grinder into the water just to keep the salts up. But
that's interesting. I've never. I think you know what, actually I think I've heard of that and then thought, no, there's no way people do that. That sounds
hmm,
strange. Putting salt, just like, actual salt in the
again,
water.
I'm not advising drinking salt water when you train because
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Well, I assume the majority of my audience will have the common sense to know that, but yeah, it's worth stating that too.
Hmm.
And uh, just one thing I want to add on to that in that you see there's a whole industry built around like supplements and stuff. So kind of like I'll take this protein shake after your workout or
Hmm.
take this miracle pill, whatever, nonsense
Drink
you
your
see.
BCAAs.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, yeah, actually, that's actually something I want to ask about. BCAAs. No idea what they are, but I see them
Okay.
advertised every so often. So if we go with the first question of like protein shakes and supplements after your workout, in your opinion, do you think it's better just to have a wholesome meal, or can you just have some form of protein shake or a bit of both?
So the idea of supplements is that it's to fill a gap in your diet. If you're getting all these nutrients from your diet, you shouldn't need the supplements. A good whey protein or casein or soy protein, whatever you're taking, is beneficial in that it's convenient. You can have that after, during training, anytime you want. But if you're getting enough protein from your diet, you shouldn't need to supplement with it. Some people like it just because it is quick and easy. Straight after a workout, get a shake down you, and depending on the person, they might have a long drive coming out of the gym before they get home. They might have to then start cooking their dinner. So 45-minute window we talked about before. Getting a shake in is better than getting nothing.
Yeah,
So it's more a matter of convenience than it is you must have this or you're never going to grow. It can help for some people to get extra calories in if they're struggling to get the food down because
yeah,
it's easier to drink calories than it is to eat calories. Um, Mark, as we talked about, saw his best progress when he was taking mass gainer, which is a mix of carbohydrates and proteins into a shake. It's not saying he ever needed it, but it did help him get the extra calories in.
yeah. Yeah, something that maybe I'll look into as well. Um,
Sure.
so BCAAs, what are they? Do,
Right.
do we really need them? Is this an industry thing or what?
So BCAAs are branched chain amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins in the body. Uh, you'll go in your diet, you'll get essential amino acids, which are broken up in different dietary, what's the word? Different food groups.
Yeah,
And essential amino acids are ones that aren't naturally produced by the body, so they're essential in our diet because we need to consume them. Uh, the idea of branched chain amino acids are these you'll send you'll tend to get certain blends of amino acids in these shakes, and the idea is that you can drink them and then you don't need to worry about getting them from your diet because they're all there. Now, for the most part, they've been shown to not even get past the gut and in the digestive side of
Oh
things.
wow. Okay.
Um, there'll be loads of studies saying that it's backing them up, but for the most part, there'll be paid studies by the people that are trying to sell a product. They are absolutely not necessary as a supplement.
Right. That's really interesting. So it's key here that if you see a claim made by some sort of company that okay, check the science and then check actually who's funding the science.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like you're basically blending your money up and drinking that down. Like it's daft. And personally, like I've bought BCAAs before. When I started, I bought everything on the market just to
Yeah.
get the progress, and it is a waste of money.
Yeah. Fair.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. There's one very valuable bit of information for you
In fact,
folks.
a fella to look up on it if you're big on following YouTube fitness, Shredded Sports Science. He's a he's a sports scientist, and he debunks a lot of these things as well as he's British and takes the mick out of a lot of people and things like that. So it's very dry humor, but I enjoy it. But it's also very good information backed up by research, and he'll link you to the research. So for further
Yeah.
reading, it's great.
That's really good. I'll tell you what, actually, that sounds like a valuable resource for the audience. So I'll put that in the show
100%.
notes. And yeah, that's class. 100%. I'll be checking that one out. So next myth,
Mhm.
a calorie bank. So the audience have asked, you can save calories for one day and use them in the next. I'm going to be honest. I've not really heard of this myth. I'm completely in the dark on this. So do elaborate on this one for me.
Sure. So originally, you'll hear it as people saying about saving calories from one day. So you don't eat certain things on this day. So then the next day, you can have that slice of cake, you can have that takeaway sort of thing. Again, it's misconstrued from the idea of a calorie deficit and a calorie surplus. And it was actually the term calorie bank. I heard from a friend of mine. She was talking to a friend of hers at work who was with a personal trainer and had given her this idea of a calorie bank. And when she explained it to her, she was just in fits with it because it was absolutely ridiculous. But her personal trainer was telling her that she can save these foods from one day if she's good through the week, and then at the weekend she can just eat whatever she wants because she saved these calories through the week.
Right.
And that's terrible advice. essentially, what they're, essentially what they're doing is creating a habit of someone who's going to be restrictive through the week and then binge at the weekends. Their metabolism is going to be shot all over the place.
Yeah, it also doesn't sound very sustainable.
Not at all.
No, that's proper bro science there, isn't
Very much so.
it?
But that's not to say that periods of fasting aren't effective.
Yeah.
For the most part, binging on anything's not going to be a good thing. But it all falls down to the energy balance equation, where energy in versus energy out will dictate the change in the body. If you want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorific deficit. So the amount of energy that is expended needs to outweigh the amount that you're consuming. And vice versa. If you want to gain weight, you need to be in a calorie surplus. So you need to be consuming more than you're spending up.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, I have actually tried fasting before. It was a challenge I'd seen. It's like fast for one day,
Mm-hmm.
and I must admit, actually, I actually felt really good. I found for
Mm-hmm.
me, obviously everybody's different, but I found for me that lunchtime was my worst. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was a 2 or 3 hour window. I was like, I could eat a horse right now. Like,
You getting hangry?
yeah, I'm half tempted to go full caveman, run across the field and hunt down the cows and stuff, you know. And it's weird though. My focus was some like probably the best it's ever been. I felt weirdly enough full of energy,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt like really good as well. Like it's hard to describe a feeling of goodness, but like wholesome, and
Yeah.
I didn't initially out of a 24-hour period only feeling bad for maybe an hour or two just because that's I don't know whether the body's switching fuel
Mm-hmm.
sources or something like that. But yeah, I'd recommend a fast. Obviously, get an expert's opinion on that. But yeah, fasting. There's definitely some good stuff to fasting, I must admit.
Personally, it's not something I'm as well read on, and I haven't really done as much myself, so I don't really have much of an input for that. But I have heard from other people that it's can be very effective. Again, you're saying about energy levels. I've heard reports of like mental clarity as well
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Oh,
better
100%.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big surprise for me. The mental clarity. It was like a brain fog had gone away. And perhaps going off on a slight tangent here,
Mm-hmm.
but I've heard that the keto diet obviously is a really big thing at the minute now,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people report from it. Oh, it's my mental clarity is really good with it. Do you think that in a way? No, I don't know if it's fasting technically, because a
It's
lot.
not so much fasting.
Yeah.
So I've read up a bit more on keto because originally it was actually developed for people suffering from epilepsy,
Right. Okay.
right? And they happened to find out that as a side effect, there was weight loss. So naturally, marketing grabbed that and thought, new fad
Yeah.
diet, keto, lose your weight sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the idea of it is having your body in a state of ketogenesis is where you remove carbs from the diet to a point where the body has to metabolize fat. But the way they found it was beneficial for people with epilepsy was that the lack of glucose in the bloodstream then changed the chemical reactions in the brain, which were triggering seizures. So
Right.
it didn't
Okay.
happen as frequently.
Okay. Fair
And
enough.
then it was just as a side effect that the people that were on it also lost weight. And then it sort of spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah. Do you feel like keto is a fad diet? Do you feel that all these diets are fads, or what's your opinion on that? Like cutting out whole food groups, because there has been some very good results for people, but do you
Very
feel
good
like
results, but I think in the long term, it's not healthy to cut something out entirely.
right? Okay.
Um, well, cut an entire macronutrient group out entirely,
Yeah.
especially carbohydrates, because as it stands, glucose, which is the simplest form of sugar, is the only source of fuel for your brain. Which is why I find it ironic that people that are in a state of ketogenesis are saying they have this mental clarity when they're not technically fueling their brain.
Yeah, yeah. It's very strange.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because obviously I have no training in the field of health and fitness and
Mm-hmm.
nutrition, so I'm going based off what I see on the internet, which I try to take away a healthy dose of skepticism,
Yeah,
but then at the same time, it's kind of like, well, if you didn't believe anything on the internet, then you're kind of like, there is obviously some truth out there and everything.
yeah,
And then people say, oh, I'm on my keto diet, and they look shredded and they're,
mm-hmm.
doing all this thing. And well, there must be some truth to it, but obviously
Absolutely.
what you're saying is yes, there is truth to it, but whether long term that's good for you is perhaps
It's going to be
debatable.
weighing
It
out the
needs more
risks and benefits
yeah,
for the most
yeah.
part. And
So
as it stands, just disclaimer: I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. This is just from research papers I've read and my own study.
yeah, yeah, but it's interesting because it's interesting how there is so many weird and wonderful diets out there. Like I
Oh
know
yeah,
I know like to be honest, it does depend on the person because I don't know if you know Michaela Peterson. She has a good podcast.
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, so she suffered with really ill health for years, from what I've gathered, and had arthritis as a kid and all sorts of horribleness. And she eventually tried the carnivore diet,
Mm-hmm.
and her health is like out of this world now.
Much better.
And 100%. And obviously that'll be something to do with genetics or
Mm-hmm.
environment, combination of both, who knows. But it's interesting. I think that when it comes to diets and all these things, take the expert's opinion, but I think it's important to know your own body. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think some people in the pursuit of wanting to get strong or lose fat are willing to take on whatever diet, even if they know it's probably not going to be good for them in the short
Yeah.
or long term. But what's your take on achieving your goal, but having a healthy diet? Like because I know it's up to the individual, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you?
How to go about that,
Yeah, essentially, like
essentially.
where do you start? I mean, like there's so much information.
Yeah. So for the most part, the average person that's trying to get themselves healthy and into shape isn't going to be stepping on a stage. So they don't need to go to such extreme measures. But the issue is, in the world we live in, everyone wants results immediately. So everyone's going to take the fast track regardless of the risks. That's why PEDs are so prominent in the industry. That's why fad diets are what they are. That's why supplement industry is a multi-billion industry.
Yeah,
But just as you're saying about the girl who went onto the carnivore diet and found the benefits in that. Different blood types will dictate different dietary dispositions as well. You'll find like the likes of people that digest certain foods differently. It can actually stem back to their blood type, which I found was pretty damn interesting at one
Oh,
point.
wow. Okay.
So that's why you have different blood types, is different genetics, which will change how their dietetics work in their body.
All right. Okay.
Again,
That's
not a hematologist, but I read up on it at one point and I was like, here, this is actually
yeah.
worth
Yeah. But
further
maybe
reading.
that's a big takeaway we can all have in that, like, don't just believe what the Instagram influencer is saying. Don't believe entirely. Don't believe
Mm-hmm.
entirely.
If there's a
What
discount code or a price beside it, it's probably swaying what they're saying.
yeah, but like I think we could probably save ourselves a lot of grief if we just actually did the research ourselves. I mean, like if you're going to put something into your body or you're going to take a course of action that's
Mm-hmm.
going to affect you physiologically, perhaps it's worth spending maybe 30 minutes, an hour, just double checking the science that's
Mm-hmm.
backing this. You know what I mean?
And as a way for getting through like all the guff that is on the internet, look up research papers and
Yeah.
make sure that they aren't like funded by someone who's trying to sell something as well. But there's plenty of reputable names out there that you can that will point you in the right direction as well.
Yeah. You say you do read a lot of scientific papers and
Try to keep
research, but
current, yeah.
yeah, which is really good. And, especially as a PT, I already know you're a great guy, but that also gives me confidence that, you're constantly updating your knowledge and changing your perspective on the latest science,
Well,
which
I,
is
I
really,
think I think anyone in the industry that professes to know it all really doesn't know a damn thing.
yeah. Oh,
If you really knew this all, you'd know that it's ever changing and there's always going to be something different or new to learn about it.
yeah. Oh, 100%. So for someone who is willing to spend 30 minutes or just even a little time every day double checking the science behind the chosen route of fitness or
Mm-hmm.
nutrition they've gone, what resources do you go to, or is there a particular site that you use to see all these scientific papers? Or
Well, it would depend. I would follow a few people on YouTube, as I mentioned earlier. There's the Shredded Sports Science channel as well.
yeah,
Um, a lot of the main YouTube fitness channels, there's a lot of good quality ones out there, and the ones out there that really know their stuff tend to also post links to, oh, we've told you this because this paper, we've told you this because so and so's textbook on this sort of thing. They'll
yeah.
have their own references in their videos, which you can then follow up and do for your own reading.
That's fantastic. So, as I said earlier in the podcast as well, that I'll put that shredded fitness channel in the
Mm-hmm.
show notes, and then no doubt your algorithms will figure out, okay, this is a new thing, so that's going to suggest more reputable channels
Mm-hmm.
in that area. So that was really good. I learned a lot in that one. I'm glad. Going from absolutely no idea about a calorie bank to talking about keto to talking about
Well,
scientific papers.
we get these tangents.
That's great. I love it. I love the fact I'm learning all this. Okay, so this is the one I'm really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Big muscles equals big strength. Explain. Because that's if I see Arnie Schwarzenegger on the stage, I'm like, he's gonna punch through an iron wall.
Yeah. So it was actually a friend of mine brought me this one, and he believed that for so long as well. And it wasn't until I actually got him training and he started seeing the strength, or he was like, "But I don't look like these guys stepping up on stage. Why am I able to do this?" Sort of thing.
Mm,
So it's less a point of if someone's big, they have to be really strong, more as just because someone's small doesn't mean they can't be strong.
yeah.
Um. So again, this is looking at bodybuilders versus weightlifters. It's a good way to see like you can be brutally strong without being massive. Um, so to build muscle, it requires stimulus for the muscle to grow and make that adaptation. Um, but if you look at a lot of calisthenic athletes, they're brutally strong, but not necessarily huge. Um, the size is something you really need to keep on top of with the calories backing it up. If you aren't constantly fueling the body, it's going to realize that having all this muscle isn't actually necessary for day-to-day function, and muscle burns a lot more calories in the body than any other tissue. So having that excess of it is just a natural disposition. The body needs to be burning these calories, or body shouldn't need to be burning these calories. So if you don't train it, you'll lose the muscle.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the individual. There's no need to get brutally massive to get brutally strong. A lot of
Right.
people don't actually understand what natural strength potential is.
I'm one of those. So, so help me understand here and help the audience understand. And this is coming from a place of complete ignorance, but why is it that big muscles necessarily doesn't equal huge strength? Why is it like what is it? What's the actual science behind, say, Arnie Schwarzenegger perhaps not being as physically strong as someone half his size, but he is just dense with muscle? Like what how does that work?
So it depends on how you train and
Right.
what your goal is. Arnie's goal was to get big and get huge and get defined. It wasn't to do what some of the strongmen do. It wasn't to lift colossal amounts of weight and carry it across the street, sort of thing. Same with weightlifters. They're they're trying to stick to a weight class and move colossal amounts of weight. They're not trying to get bigger. If they get bigger, they move up a weight class, which means things change in what they're competing for.
Right. Okay. It's just strange. I get that. It's just it's weird thinking that someone who's potentially like really buff but
Mm-hmm.
isn't physically as strong as someone who's smaller in size but can lift a heavier weight. I mean, that's
It's
just
not
incredible.
it's not necessarily as black and white as saying this guy's smaller, he has to be stronger than this guy. Like
Yeah.
to get a muscle strong, the bigger a muscle is, the better strength potential it does have,
Yeah.
which is why you see these huge, like super heavy weight lifters moving even more weight than the lighter guys because they are. It's still they've got the right training stimulus to train the muscle. Whereas
Right.
if you were only training for endurance, you're never really going to put on size. You're never really going to put on as much strength, but you'll last longer than anyone else. If you're training for powerlifting and trying to stick to a weight class, you'll get colossally strong, but you don't necessarily have to get massive.
Yeah.
It's about optimizing the muscle you already have on the body.
That's interesting. So it's very, very complicated, as with all these things we talked about
Too
today.
many variables, and it's
It's
all
just
on
so
the
many.
individual as well.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose in a way that's a good thing because it can be tailored to you. There's not a one
Mm-hmm.
size fits all approach, which is
Well,
good, you know?
same with anything. Like you're looking at people and saying, "I want to look like that. I want to get as strong as that." Sorry, not you personally, just like
Yeah. Oh
as a
yeah, yeah.
person,
Yeah.
is looking at someone else and comparing yourself to them. But you're never going to look like them because your genetics are completely different. You're a different person.
Yeah.
The only true way that you could get to be like someone, like other people may not know this, but I'm a twin. The only person who can genetically look like me by training and eating like me would be my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can't look like me because you're not me. I can't
Yeah.
look like you because I'm not you.
Yeah. So stop trying.
Well,
It's like,
try all
yeah.
you want. I'll not stop you. But that's not to say you can't be the biggest you can be, the strongest you can be.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I'm learning so much on this episode. I mean, it just goes to show, like, especially on Instagram and on, well, the internet in general, people in these little 1 minute videos or the little snippets that they can put on Instagram TV or small YouTube videos, it make everything sound so simple, but it just isn't. Which,
Well, to an extent, it is simple.
yeah.
But the thing is, the simplicity of it for so many people is long term and boring.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. But
Because again, because everyone wants results now, they don't want
yeah.
to listen to the guy that says, "Well, if you take these 5 exercises and do them for the next 5 years, you'll get there."
Yeah. No, I want
And
that. I
it
want that in six
absolutely works
months.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I want that in 6 months for beach season. It's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
right, okay, right, yeah. Here's a fad diet and some silly exercises for you.
Mhm.
Fair enough. And um, that leads nicely on to the next um myth that somebody's put in here, in that no pain equals no gain. So I have had plenty of bro science on this. People saying unless you're not sore, your body's not working. And
Mhm.
if you know, and then I've seen a really interesting clip on the Joe Rogan show. I can't remember the gent's name, but he was basically like, I'm a fan of essentially no not being sore after a workout. Like you need to make it like play. Otherwise, what's the point? It's not sustainable. Why would you enjoy if you don't enjoy working out, you're not going to sustainably do it. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion on that whole take?
Well, for a start, the whole no pain, no gain thing feels like a catchphrase from an 80s action movie. But there's a different type of pain from injury than there is from training hard and putting yourself through your paces. Um, for the most part, pain is just a welcoming for change in the body. It's it's there for a reason. Like you touch a hot stove, burn your hand, pain's telling you move your hand or it's going to damage your body. You definitely move your hand. So say you were doing a squat and you're feeling your knee was sore. Why
Yeah.
would you change something about that to fix the issue?
Yeah.
But in terms of training to a point where you're like physically can't move and you're just in constant pain, yeah, there'll be mild discomfort, but you shouldn't ever get yourself to a point where you literally can't do anything with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So just out of curiosity, what's your take on going to the point of failure? Because again, I've heard loads of bro science on that. Of some people saying, stop 3 reps before your point of failure, and then other people saying no, absolutely, 100% go to failure every time. What's your
So
take?
it would depend on the individual to define what failure is. Personally, when I would use it, I would refer to it as technical failure. So if the movement you're doing gets to a point where you fatigue that the form breaks down, that is when you stop.
Right.
Because you
Okay.
can cheat your way through multiple reps, but for the most part, if you don't really know what you're doing, you're going to injure yourself. Like as your
Right.
form breaks down, other muscles are going to take in. Say you're doing a deadlift and you get to a point where your legs are starting to go, your back's going to try and take over to compensate, and putting that load on your back is just going to damage it in the long term.
Right. That's really interesting. So, whereas a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past, I'm trying to smash out, say, push-ups,
Mm-hmm.
and I know for a fact my form is breaking down,
Mm-hmm.
and I know this is just me personally. I know that my left arm, when I get
Mm-hmm.
really really tired, will take over the majority of the work, and the right arm will just be like
Just
sort of
balancing.
yeah, pretty much. And it's kind of like, okay, I know my form's breaking down, but it's fine because I'm still going, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
But technically what you're saying is perhaps I should stop, and other people should stop maybe 5 reps before, so you've got perfect form, so you're not at risk of injuring yourself.
So in the beginning, like when you're new to the training, this would be sound advice to follow because they're not putting themselves at risk. As your training age increases, as you've been doing it for longer, I would advise you'll know your body to the point that you can maybe grind a couple of reps out, as long as the form's not breaking down to a point where it can cause injury.
Yeah.
But a newly trained individual won't know the limitations of their body to know how to control a fourth
Yeah.
rep or a controlled negative or the likes of that.
Yeah.
Which
So
again is why it would help to have another set of eyes on you who knows what they're at.
yeah, perfect. And so basically, if you're new to the gym, perfect your form over
100%.
lifting the heavy weights, because like, and I talk about this in the podcast before, but I think that ego comes into this a lot of time. Now ego
Oh,
can be,
especially in lads.
oh yeah, but I think
Peacock lifting.
oh yeah, exactly. It's like ego can be positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe it's this one dimensional. Ego, if you say ego, people automatically assume something negative. There are positive and negative effects to ego, but I've seen it in the gym as well, where you know, and I don't know why people do it. I'll walk in clearly as a new member of the gym, and some dude who I've been watching for like 20 or 30 seconds smash out a normal exercise, and then suddenly he sees me, and then suddenly the grunting starts, and he's like lifting
Chest
like
puffs up and
yeah,
that.
I'm like, dude, I'm a new guy at the gym. I can see you're buff. I don't need to like, you don't need to show me that like you're the biggest guy in the gym.
He's just
Like,
asserting his dominance over me.
I know. I'm kind of like, okay, dude, that
I
is
mean,
like totally unnecessary, but sure.
at the end of the day, that's his own insecurities.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I mean, it's kind of like when you do go into the gym, and I know you and Mark were very good at teaching me this about even just doing the exercise with no weight. Because I remember being in within your gym
Mm-hmm.
and doing a squat with an empty bar and just perfecting that movement. And even
Yeah.
with an empty bar, you were able to show me several areas where I was going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good because if I had weight on there, no doubt I probably could have lifted the weight, but
Yeah.
my chance of injury would have been
Up
severe.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same
So
thing. If you can't walk why run sort of thing.
Yeah, there you go. There's your one-liner, folks. Walk before you can run, and get expert advice from a reputable PT.
But
And sorry, go on.
so a way I always like to think of it is if you're in a gym or things like that, treat the equipment as if it's made of glass.
Oh,
That
right.
way you're not gonna, for one, you're not gonna look like that douchebag that's throwing the plates about, and for two, like the extra finesse and control it takes to set a heavy deadlift down gently will absolutely train you stronger.
That's my biggest takeaway from today's episode. 100% doing that. And then the next thing that the audience have asked is scales are the best way to track fat loss.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm gonna say, yeah, that sounds reasonable, but is it a myth?
Again, misconstrued. A lot of these things
Okay.
are misconstrued, or we're just called them myth construed at this point.
There you go.
But
That could be the podcast title. I like it.
but so yeah, scales are the best way to track fat loss in particularly overweight individuals. Once you get down to a certain point and you're building muscle at the same time, you're inevitably going to put more weight on the more muscle you gain. And as it comes, muscle weighs more than fat.
Right.
That's not to say if you're massively heavy, it's because it's all muscle, because that's not always the case. But you will get to a point where if you've lost enough fat and you're building muscle, the number on the scales will go back up. And the issue with this is a lot of people that are of average weight and want to get a bit more definition in their muscles, when they start seeing that, they look at the scales and see the numbers go up, they panic, so they stop doing it. When
Right.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. So the better judge for it would be if you're particularly overweight, by all means use the scales as a good consistent way. But if you're at a lower body fat and you're recomping your body, use a mirror. Like if you look and feel fine, truly that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Unless you're aiming to get into a weight class for some particular sporting event or something like that. But for general health, like, do you feel comfortable in your body? Do you look comfortable? Are you
Yeah.
happy with how you look? It doesn't necessarily have to be about the numbers on the scale.
Yeah. 100%. And what's your opinion on it seems to be an explosion of these smart scales on the market, the ones that measure your body fat percentage, how much your bone mass weighs and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like what's your take on that? Have you done any research on that?
So yeah, they are effective to a point, and it's always good to have a reference point for then seeing progress and tracking things. It's never going to be an exact, like for example, the body fat percentage on it. What it does when you stand on the scale, something you'll also see will have a wee handle on it. It sends an electric current through the body, which you're not going to feel it, but it goes through the body. They refer to it as a body impedance scale, and at the end, it'll give you this body fat percentage. And some of them will give you a bit more info as well, but generally, you'll punch in your height, your age, and your gender, and it'll send a thing through and tell you what like so your BMI are. It'll tell you body fat percentage that. But at the end of the day, it can be thrown off by a glass of water. Like if you have an
Oh,
extra pint of water, the results can vary. So the idea of it as a tool is if you measure yourself under the same circumstances every time, best way to do it would be as soon as you get up in the morning, go to the bathroom, don't eat or drink anything, jump on the scales because it's repeatable. And you'll
yeah.
see over time then it said body fat percentage was this on day one. If you repeat every morning, go to the bathroom, weigh yourself without eating or drinking, you're under the same circumstances. So you'll be able to track progress. So it may not be a direct, say it threw up 25% body fat. It may not necessarily be true. For some people, it could be more, for some people, it could be less. But if you're always weighing in the same way, then you'll be able to see the change in that figure as the progress increases.
That's really good. Yeah, so consistency is the key in that one under the CM testing, a bit like a basic science experiment in a way.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, your basic science class came to the rescue there,
Mm-hmm.
folks.
Although
Um,
I think the only true way to get a body fat measurements would be the likes of a DEXA scan or a body pod sort of thing that actually is built for that purpose. Whereas a 30 quid scale off Amazon, it's not going to be as accurate.
yeah. And those things you just mentioned, are they How do you go about get if someone's very, very serious about losing body fat or wants to have a baseline for where they are? How do they go about getting those ultra
So
accurate results?
you'd have to look up to find what locations they are that hold these machines.
Yeah,
You'll find actually a lot of universities would hold them because
yeah,
obviously they have their own testing facilities and that. I believe you can actually get it done at Georgetown University if you
right,
want to go
okay,
experiment.
yeah,
Um, but there will be different areas that are purpose built for it. Same way you would have another area would be purpose built for testing the likes of strength output or VO2 max. They would have a specific place for body fat measurements as well.
all right, interesting. There you go. So if you want to do that, then look it up in your own time and see that whatever your location
See
is.
what's local to you.
Yeah, exactly. And on to our final myth of the day, training frequency. Um, and that is something that is 100% bro science for me. I've heard everything under the sun,
Yeah.
everything, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know what's true anymore. So I'll let you take away on that one.
Again, it's down to the individual, which sounds like a broken record on repeat, but that's where
but
we're
it,
at
but
now.
but facts are facts.
Yeah. So you'll see these people and you'll hear of people training 5, 6 times a week. You'll hear of other people doing 3 times a week. You'll hear of other people training once or twice a week. Depends on the individual, how trained they are, and what their goals are. If it's the likes of bodybuilding, trying to build lean muscle mass, the more frequent, the more volume added into that, the better. So that's why you'll see these 5 or 6 days a week, or you'll see training splits where they'll do like 3 days and then they'll repeat those 3 days, sort of thing. If it's strength training, generally 3 to 5 days is fine. If you're going super intense, 3 is plenty. The idea being that you need a day in between to recover between sessions so that you're actually going to optimize that strength building process. Uh, if it's endurance, could do it daily. Tends to be low intensity but high duration. So
Right.
recovery should be okay for that for doing it daily. But average person probably get fine 3 to 5 days. If you're new to it, even doing it once a week consistently is going to be better than doing it maybe did it 3 times this week, didn't train for 2 weeks, did it another 2 times this week, sort of thing.
Yeah.
End of the day, consistency is key.
Yeah. So just a question on that. Well, two questions actually. One myth, I don't know. Well, yeah, I gotta call it a myth. One thing I've heard is that you shouldn't train the same muscle group twice in 1 week. So I feel like this ties in nicely with this question. Is that a myth, or is there any truth to that? Or because if you're smashing in the same workout 4 or 5 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, you're doing all right because you're exercising. But
Yep.
and provided you give ample recovery
Mm-hmm.
to that particular muscle group or whatever, you should be fine. But every time I hear anything about fitness, this seems to be like this one of those golden liners that people constantly chuck out. Don't exercise the same muscle twice a week. What's the truth behind that?
I would say that's a bit of nonsense.
It's nonsense, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, depending on the movements you're going to do, you're naturally going to hit the same muscle group multiple times a week. Say you take a day and you're doing bench press on one day and another day you're doing shoulder press. Both of those movements include extension at the elbow.
Yeah.
Triceps hit on both of those. Say
Right.
you throw in push-ups on another day, that's a triceps are involved, chest is involved.
Yeah.
Same thing. Um, I've seen some bodybuilders would say try and train each muscle group twice a week.
Right.
And I've
Okay.
seen other things that say that you want to try and get 21 good working sets on each muscle per week. And there'll always be different approaches to it.
Yeah.
But I honestly I can't say I've heard someone say that you only train it once per week.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
Yeah. So so again, it all comes down to the individual, your goals, and your
Mm-hmm.
particular training regimen, and it's not going to be a quick fix either. I think that's
Yeah.
probably the four big takeaways, probably that we can all sort of mull on that. In
Mm-hmm.
the age of TikTok and Amazon Prime and this, your body, your dream body or your goals are not going to arrive tomorrow with Amazon
Mm-hmm.
Prime. You actually have to grind at them every day consistently.
And at the end of the day, your own goals are your own goals.
Yeah, don't
Don't
base
base them off what someone else's.
yeah, some wisdom right there. Um, and one final question, just based off that main question, then, for someone who hasn't done any fitness, say, since school, and they just want to start getting into fitness. With regards to how often they train, and I know we're going to go on like a broken record here, it depends. But is there like a rule of thumb, like say in the beginning, maybe once or twice a week, or 3 times a week, or of a particular exercise? So even if it's a walk, one or
Mhm.
one twice, once or twice a week, or whatever, is there a training frequency that's just good for all beginners, or again, it depends?
Well, obviously it's all going to depend, but if you're brand new to it, the best way to do it would be what can you keep up.
Right,
So
that's really good.
if they've never trained before, they're going to have to change things in their schedule to fit it in, regardless if it's changing things after school or work, or changing things from, oh, I'm not going to sit in the Xbox for an hour tonight, I'm going to do something different. Making that change and making it consistent, because if a person says, right, I'm going to do it, I'm going to train 6 days a week, does it for 1 or 2 weeks and then gets sick of it, they've already sickened themselves. It's not sustainable. Whereas I'm going to train once a week, they're more likely to adhere to that. And then as they build up their abilities, they can add in an extra day here and there.
Yeah.
So
So
whatever they can keep up,
yeah,
whatever they'll stick to.
something they find enjoyable, then something that they're not
Absolutely.
going, yeah. I've recently taken up something as simple as walking. Like every
Mm-hmm.
Sunday I go for like a 6 mile walk, and it's just great for clearing my head, and I listen to podcasts while I'm doing it as well.
Yeah.
And I always normally run, but it makes a nice change just to have a nice walk. So there, that could be
Mm-hmm.
something you could do once a week. Go for a walk, start at a mile, work it up to 2 or something, and or not even a walk, find
It
something you just enjoy.
doesn't even have to be of the purpose of I'm going for a walk to train. Go for a walk to get into the feeling of just moving better.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Get out in the fresh air and the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Although there's not much of that in Northern Ireland,
Well,
unfortunately. But yeah.
a few days a year we'll have it.
I remember last summer it was a Wednesday. Right. Um, folks, that's all our myths for today. But as I said, when I first started this podcast, we're going to get Rue on at least once a quarter to, ask about all things fitness related. And yeah, we can look forward to having him back on again. But in the meantime, Brew, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and doing this little myth busting session with
No
us.
trouble. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, well, I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. So, yeah, folks, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you all soon. Once again, Rue, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.